Greetings and salutations, everybody, and welcome back. I've got a new video here for you. A series I've seen all of previously, but have been wanting to revisit. But first, for those who are new, I like to make these little videos about things that I enjoy and want to share, usually about film, but not exclusively. While you're here, consider subscribing and hitting that little bell icon down in the corner so you get notifications for when I put up new content, which is once or twice a week, although I do try to work in some additional ones when I have time. While you're here, be sure to check out my back catalog and stick around to the end of the video so that way you'll really feel the need to want to share both this video and channel around, as it really does help out quite a bit. Anyways, now that all that is out of the way, I've been revisiting the Friday the 13th franchise. So I grew up with these films. These are some of the first horror films that I ever saw, especially ones that I got to rewatch in high rotation through, any summer afternoon or sick day home from school. Part 6 I probably knew the best from this series, and probably second only to Part 1 is the one. There's been a lot of times that I've revisited the first films in certain franchises to kind of see where it all began and see where it all went eventually. But before I dive into too much, if you haven't seen the Friday the 13th films and are interested in them, probably shouldn't be watching this video just yet. You might want to watch the first 3 and then come back to check this out, because there are going to be a few spoilers thrown in here and there, though seeing as this film series is 40 years old or so, you've had enough time to check it out. Anyways, I picked up the box set by Scream Factory, I believe it is, not too long ago, because an acquaintance of mine on Twitter had actually posted that they received theirs in the mail, and it reminded me that I've been meaning to get around to this for quite a while. I finally dropped that cash, picked up that set, and it's a great set. Has every film in it, including the remake, so it's definitely worth checking out. So for this first installment, as I'm working my way through this, I just wanted to concentrate on the first 3 films in the series. So I'm kind of calling this one From Mother to Mask, from the time that it starts all the way till when he gets the iconic mask in that 3rd film. So I remember the first one in the series pretty well. So, I love the backstory of it. It's very quick that they work this in, that kid drowns while the counselors are, bumping hoo-haws and tallywhackers, and then the camp closes. Years later, the camp reopens, and as things are getting set up, up and running, the counselors are kind of being killed off one by one. So we get some really interesting kills, some really cool effects that were very groundbreaking for the time, very gory for the time, and of course a bit of comedy from some of the counselor characters as well. And a great twist, for anybody new to the franchise. I'm sure at the time that it came out there were no expectations, but now years later, if somebody's checking it out for the first time, I think it's great that they go in expecting to see Jason in a hockey mask killing people, and that not only is there no hockey mask in this one, there isn't really Jason. You get a flashback at the beginning and a little pop-up at the end, because it all turns out to be Jason's mother. Now this one, when I first saw it, really stuck with me because, when I was a little kid, I found it terrifying that a mother could go off the deep end like that and basically end up losing her mind and being behind all of these killings. Later down the line, as I was getting into more horror films as I got older, I felt similar about Norman Bates in the original Psycho. You expect a killer of one kind, then you get this unexpected reveal, that somebody as weak as Norman Bates, or as presumably nurturing as Mrs. Voorhees would be as a mother, could actually be behind all these killings. Now the Vince Vaughn remake of Psycho is different. That guy looked like a killer the entire time, but I won't go into that blasphemous film. Anyways, so it's a really good film. I thought it was great, and even introducing people to it for the first time, they actually seemed pretty surprised that they enjoyed it, considering some people are dismissive of slasher films. So it's interesting. Now we go on to part 2, which I watched the same exact night. Took out one disc after watching all the special features, popped in the other, queued up part 2, and we get a nice 5-year time jump, which is something I didn't remember about it, that there is a pretty big gap between the 2 films timeline-wise, even though they're just released about a year apart. The opening gives us this very quick ending to kind of show what happens to that final girl, that she eventually gets taken out somehow. But now this film is taking place in a different camp in that area. So it's not even at Camp Crystal Lake. We don't have, anything set up like that. It's a completely different camp. A few counselors do venture over to check out this camp that had these killings 5 years earlier, while Jason is on the prowl. This time with a bag over his head, with a little hole in the corner of it so he can see. So another movie without the iconic mask might still turn off a couple people that they were expecting to see that. But Jason takes quite a hit at the end of this one. I believe he gets a machete down his left collarbone or something. And this all happens while he's fighting with somebody after being kind of distracted, involving this almost altar kind of thing that he has set up with his mother's severed head on it, and one of the women in the story trying to like distract him with that, putting on like the mother's sweater and everything. It's crazy tense scene, but ultimately there's not much of a resolution. Jason just kind of gets away and the girl is safe, okay, off into the woods. So who knows what's going to happen. So then finally we go on to part 3, which was a 3D film. This edition did have the 3D version available, but I don't have a 3D TV. I've actually never seen this version in 3D, not even with the different colored glasses. But because of that, the movie has a lot of that leaning into the 3D aspect of it, which was pretty interesting, and I'm sure at the time was kind of cool to see, but it does stick out probably more since it's not in 3D. All the times that like a yo-yo coming at the screen, a wallet being thrown to somebody, but for some reason it's shot in such a way that it comes right towards the screen. And then even, Jason taking an axe to the head and then the arms coming up right into the screen. It's just so obvious that they're trying to get in and use that 3D effect. So, and that's how they did it with 3D back then. Instead of doing something like Avatar, where they try to extend the scene into it and give depth, they're just trying to go for the gimmick as much as they can, which is fine for a horror movie or a Harold and Kumar Christmas movie. But when you're watching it in 2D, those scenes always stick out and kind of pulls me out of the movie a little bit to say, this is where they tried 3D. This is where they tried 3D. Now they tried this. Oh, look, they're going to shoot a harpoon gun at you. But when you put all that aside, it's still a really fun film. Now we don't have any counselors. We just have friends who are trying to get away from it all, out to this cabin in the area. And Jason is still around though. He's been still kind of stalking through the woods. It's only been a few days since the events of the last film had taken place. So slowly as he works his way through these kids and is killing them off, we finally come across the iconic mask from one of the characters who was kind of like a prankster. One of the ones adding to a lot of the comedy in the series, trying to scare somebody with this mask on, and then he ends up getting killed. Jason gets his mask, so now we kind of have Jason in his most recognizable form. So it was really interesting to see, how they kind of put all that together, because, overall I'd say this film was a lot of fun because we got some good kills, some good effects, some comedy thrown in, and the ever important 80s horror nudity that they like to sprinkle in there. It's fun no matter what. So, Jason is presumed dead, and then we're going to move on to Friday the 13th, the final chapter, but that 4th one in the series will be covered later down the line. And, but yeah, as far as these first 3, from it being his mother to how he got the mask, all 3 of these I love. They have a very quick runtime, running anywhere from 80 to 95 minutes. I've always felt that anything that runs on too long is going to be either not scary, or if it's a comedy, it's not going to be funny. More isn't necessarily better with horror. I feel like we got to get something quick and through to really startle you, and that 80 to 95 minute running time seems so common back in the 80s, and I think that's why I still love a lot of those films, as well as with the practical effects. And also back then they really didn't take themselves too seriously. We just have a nice time with these films. They're still highly rewatchable even after all these years, and even knowing any twists or who the final girl's going to be or what's going to happen to Jason at the end, they're always fun to queue up and check them out again. So if you haven't seen them in a while, I definitely recommend checking them out, doing a bit of a revisit. There were lots of points of the stories in each film that I'd completely forgot, especially in part 2 and 3. I had a lot of stuff mixed up as far as which one had the guy in the wheelchair, which one had the prankster. I know he got the mask in part 3, but I forget how he got it or who he got it from. Who's the final girl in part 2 versus 3? I started getting them mixed up. But it was great to kind of go in and revisit these again, really paying attention, not on the, in the background of a Halloween party or something, but actually sitting down and paying attention to it and really taking them all in. They were a lot of fun. So they're definitely worth the revisit. And next video I'm going to be making in this series, I'm just going to call them the Tommy Jarvis trilogy for part 4, 5, and 6, where we're going to see basically a triple feature of how Tommy goes from this kid to a troubled teen to escaping an asylum and causing the resurrection of Jason. Anyways, I'm going to jump into those next. So, thanks for stopping by. Be sure to follow all that YouTube stuff that I mentioned before, and, subscribe wherever the buttons are, hitting that bell and everything. Share the video around, and I will see you in the next one.